Now let's talk about devotion to family. In Joshua 24 and verse 15, he said, this is Joshua talking to Israel in his day, if it seems evil to you to serve the Lord, choose for yourselves this day whom you will serve. Whether the gods which were your fathers served that were on the other side of the river, or the gods of the Amorites in whose land you dwell. But as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. Now, is this passage about Joshua's devotion to God? Obviously, I'm not expecting you to answer that out loud, but I think you can see that it is. Is this passage about Joshua's devotion to his family? Yes. It is. Devotion to family, true devotion to family, doesn't lead your family away from God. It leads your family to God. I've heard a lot of people talk about, well, we're not going to go and be involved in this thing with the church, and we're not going to attend so often and do these things because our family is important, you see, and we have these family activities. Well, your family activities need to center around your devotion to God. And if they don't be shocked if your family isn't centered around God. Joshua's devotion to his family, his household, meant that he led them to serve God. In Proverbs 11 and 29, he who troubles his own house will inherit the wind, and the fool will be servant to the wise of heart. Don't be a trouble to your family. If you're devoted to your family, you won't trouble your household. What will you do? You'll be like Joshua. You will influence and impact them towards devotion to the Lord, following the Lord, faithfulness to the Lord. Think about how that's expressed in marriage. In Ephesians 5, verse 32 and 33, this is a great mystery, but I speak concerning Christ and the church. Nevertheless, let each one of you in particular so love his wife as himself, and the wife see that she respects her husband. Now, we center on this passage, and correctly so, we put a lot of emphasis on how a fellow loves his wife and what a servant to his wife he ought to be, and the devotion to his wife, and all the things about him and his wife. And then we think about that sister in the Lord there respecting her husband and treating him properly with honor and respect, and all that goes with it in the things that are taught about the marriage relationship. But when we do those things, understand what's happening. It is an ongoing gospel sermon. Because Paul said, I'm talking about Christ and the church when I teach you how to behave in your marriage. So when we act properly, devoted to our family, our marriages, we are showing our devotion to the Lord by preaching the gospel. Your marriage preaches the gospel if it's right and if you're acting right. And some households don't do that. Some Christian couples don't do that. Some Christian couples don't show this kind of love and respect, do they? And there's no hint of Christ and the church seen in that. When I was describing earlier my wife's self-sacrifice and things she was doing to fill our home with joy and what a servant she was being, were you developing a mental image there, or a picture of self-sacrifice and servitude? Is that not a picture of our devotion to Christ as his bride? Just like my bride is devoted to me. She was doing a lot of things just to please me and make me happy. It wasn't because she was hunting a hobby. She has plenty to do, trust me. That was all because she was showing her respect for me. Well, when I talked about reciprocation and trying to be a servant leader for her and fulfill my obligation, I didn't go into a lot of detail about that. I don't think there's any point for that. But there's a lot of different ways that I'm trying to think of how I can be better serving in her interests in the way that I lead our family and all that sort of thing. Is that not a picture of Christ's love for the church? Brethren, when we think about sacrificing what we want for the good of our wives, We're preaching the cross. And when that sister acts in that level of love and respect and devotion, she's preaching submission to Christ. It's an ongoing gospel sermon when we do it right. Devotion to family is a powerful way to demonstrate our devotion to God and the importance of His church.